Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Now today, ladies and gents, Venusians and Linulians of all ages, is the third and final edition of the miraculous Airship run of episodes on my YouTube channel. So I hope you all didn't get tired of what may be the most bizarre flap in recent memory. I know I didn't, and believe me, for as strange as the first two parts in this three-part series were, this final piece is kind of really what ties all the weirdness together. A big weird bow. So where were we? Let's see, we covered the preceding sightings of 1896 throughout California in episode 1, and then in episode 2 we delved into the mysterious cases of contact from 1897. So that leaves us with, drumroll please, oh yeah, that strange issue of monsters showing up in areas of the flap. Yes, I said monsters. So late April 1897, Adams County, Ohio organized a posse of 30 men to chase down a wild man that had attacked a young boy. It would reappear again on May 26th and was described as gorilla-like and over 6 feet tall. Not only are there several accounts of these so-called wild men from around prime airship time, but you also have Black Panthers. Now this is a hot topic lately as Black Panther sightings are either on the rise or finally kind of hitting public view, much to the chagrin of government agencies everywhere. And they tend to be associated with other paranormal phenomenon, and this definitely includes Ohio and the surrounding areas in 1897. So there they were. Not only in these cases do you have sightings of the creature, but reports too of the killing of livestock. In Pine Lake, Michigan and Logan, Ohio, these were two places where sheep, hogs, chickens, and would you even believe it, cattle, had been killed by the mysterious big black cat. In Chillicothe, a strange feline was reported that had a large head, short legs, and big feet. Dogs sent after it came back injured and bloody, and they wouldn't go back out again. And small animals had reportedly been killed in the area. Now again, one of the best worst-kept secrets of modern ufology is the connection between UFO flaps and cryptid accounts. And as I'm thinking about it, some among us might be wondering, what determines a UFO flap as opposed to simply a whole bunch of sightings of UFOs at total random? And that's a very good question, one that will probably require a video of its own at some point in time. However, I'm going to try and sum it up in a word or two here. In my humble opinion, a flap constitutes sightings of unexplained objects occurring on a large scale within a certain amount of regularity, within a certain space, within a certain time. And the paranoid voice in the back of my head that does a really, really awful Scully impersonation reminds me, the airship didn't appear to be one brand of object. And that's exactly right. I mean, to conclude, you have big bird-shaped objects, flying boats, cigar-shaped crafts, fireballs, points of light, sheets of canvas, bicycle-operated mezzanine airships with water wheels and rudders, and in one very notable case, a giant man swimming through the air with an electric light on his back. Personally, I feel like a flap, if all of these things are occurring with a very high amount of regularity as opposed to the norm, all of these things should be included in a flap regardless of apparent nature. And it's this connection, that of multiple sightings of any sort of object with regularity in a certain time, that must also include other types of phenomenon, such as ghost or cryptid flare-ups along with UFOs. Before we go any further, I would also like to point out another very strange thing, and that is the possible Man in Black connection to the airship phenomenon. In one account, the occupants suggested taking the witnesses to a place where it does not rain. Could that possibly hearken to the weather-impervious Men in Black, specifically of Mount Misery fame? Another put the airship occupant as wearing smoked glasses, again a precursor to the sunglass-wearing MIBs of our current state of things. Even the name Smith from the Barclay encounter, a name very often associated with the mysterious Men in Black. Some encounters even with the mysterious inventor or the mechanics peg them as possible MIB material. But moving on, we also have one more very fascinating facet to attend to, and that is airship artifacts. Earlier I mentioned the 2 boulders tossed out of an airship by long-bearded occupants in Lynn Grove, Iowa. In Battle Creek, Michigan, an aluminum wheel fell out of the sky. Bizarre as that is, take the transaction which occurred between John Barclay of Rockland, Texas, and an airship occupant by the name of, as I mentioned previous, Smith. Or rather, he asked to be called Smith at least. April 22nd of 1897, Barclay had been awakened by his dog going totally bonkers, looked outside and saw an oblong machine with wings and lights hovering about 15 feet off the ground. It circled several times, then landed in a pasture. Barclay armed himself and headed out, and met up with a very ordinary-looking man who asked him to please put the rifle away. The man reportedly said not to mind about his name, call it Smith, and asked Barclay to get some common hardware items for him from town, giving him a $10 bill to do so. When Barclay returned with only a few of the items from the list and attempted to give the money back, the man refused to take it, thanked him, shook hands, and said not to follow him any nearer the object. So, the same night as this transaction, in Joceran, Texas, Mr. Frank Nichols was awakened by machinery noises around midnight. Looked outside, brilliant lights in a strange vessel, sounds slightly familiar, resting over his cornfield. Before Nichols approached the object, two men with buckets asked if they could draw water from his well. Now, the water gig is a strange one that crops up every now and again in reference to UFO sightings. But back to artifacts from airships, not the souvenirs that the occupants took with them. Many accounts of letters dropped by the airship, and even offering coordinates sometimes, have been recorded. One notable letter from Chicago was attached to what was left of somebody's lunch. Another from Appleton, Wisconsin, affixed to an iron rod. Then, rather conveniently, there was another letter in some place that was attached to a bottle opener. And then you have the half-peeled potato that fell from the sky in Atchison, Kansas, and a Canadian newspaper, in perfect condition, which fell from a dark object above Burton, Michigan. Like Simonton's pancakes, all this hard evidence falling from the sky is proof of something. But what remains the question? After all, if we look to the skies for friendly space brothers, why are they chucking potatoes at us? And this brings up a very, very interesting point. The perception and belief regarding these events. Ancient astronaut theorists would have us believe that extraterrestrial contact is not a new concept or point of belief, that as a matter of fact it was downright accepted just as common knowledge in some golden age when Atlantis had not yet taken on water. But regardless of when this concept first emerged in our human minds, it certainly wasn't the model for belief in the 1800s, nor was it an entirely new concept. Plurality of worlds had been hotly debated as a matter of religion and philosophy for quite some time. But this is going far down a muddy road. What I will say pretty quick is that one get-up-and-go individual did happen to write into the Sacramento Bee about his particular theory. The airship was, after careful thought and consideration, most likely a peaceful emissary from the Lord Commissioner of Mars. Still, others believe that the airship was evidence of the end times, giving religious portent to sightings of things in the sky, as we've been doing for a very, very long time now. However, the predominant theory was that the objects in question were of earthly origin, that they were in fact the flying machine that people had been so long waiting for and trying to come up with. The occupants then went on to confirm this, not only by implication in how they look, they appeared to be human, but by downright taking people through the ship and explaining to them that, hey, look, I'm a bearded human inventor, these are my human mechanic sidekicks, please pick up some earthly materials for us with this earth money so we can go help Cuba win against Spain. I mean, how much clearer can it possibly be? So never mind the fact then, as we understand 100-some years later, the machines which claim to run on such varied fuel as steam, wings, condensed electricity, and compressed air could never possibly get off the ground, much less hover, circle, or maneuver at such high rates of speed as was observed with these airships. Not only that, but the noise, which varied between whirring machinery, silence, voices, and music, usually was never in complete cohesion with the issue at hand. Take also the fact which was pointed out in the papers at the time that, if an object is 1,000 feet up in the air, how can you possibly hear a human voice from that? Now, the same patterns emerge in this era as with others. We have transactions between witness and occupant, witnesses even dining with occupants, music from the craft. These sort of things are straight out of fairy lore and make an appearance in modern UFO lore. Then we also have the issue of gathering water, common in both UFO and fairy lore, as are mysterious livestock deaths. In modern terminology, we have the mutilation of Alexander Hamilton's cow in bright searchlight beams. What if sightings of the Wondrous airship are kind of the bridge between fairy lore and the current extraterrestrial hypothesis? I mean, again, the edge of the coin, what if this time period is the flip between the belief system of fairies being the predominant thing seen in the sky and UFOs and spacecraft and aliens? I mean, if this is the case, we're faced yet again with the idea that this phenomenon is somehow not a completely objective occurrence, but rather part dependent upon our concepts and ideas. Now, a quick thing I will mention is that sightings of things in the sky never stop, really. It's not like you simply have these flaps that then, flare up and then nothing and then something flares up again. And the mystery airships actually had been spotted as early as 1850 in Europe, and there was another rash of them in 1909 in New Zealand. So that whole time period, you have sightings of these airships every now and again. What's really interesting to note, though, is that it's the beliefs on these objects which have their trends and fads. It's the belief systems that really rise and fall. I mean, prior to the airship sightings, you have fairies and demons and angels observed in the sky, in palaces and ships. And after this, you have flying saucers, though the extraterrestrial theory really took some time to get off the ground. I mean, reports through the early 1900s really are kind of a spattering of beliefs, many of them Earth-centric. And it's interesting to note that at this point in time, that of 1896-97, technological ingenuity was all the rage, and the predominant belief of the airships is that they are human inventors with wondrous machines. And what's even more interesting then is that the phenomenon itself kind of seems to go out of its way to confirm this. And it makes me question, even currently then, how much evidence we receive from the phenomenon is tainted before it ever even hits us. I mean, in the case of 1896 and 97, between the human-looking occupants and the letters and the patents that never were, whatever the airship was, or whatever was in the airship, however you prefer to see it, took full advantage of this strong belief, this belief in human ingenuity and scientific and technological marvels, and just ran with it, or flew. So I hope you all enjoyed this pretty in-depth look at one of ufology's earliest mysteries, and I promise that my next YouTube episode will be something different. Till then, you can catch me on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. My podcast is called Just Another Tinfoil Hat. New episodes every other Monday, and old episodes on Podbean. And if you want to keep up on whatever I'm doing, you can check out my website, which is, if you can believe this, also called justanothertinfoilhat.com. With that said, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.
Doing.